All right, YouTube, we're rocking in about 30 seconds.
And here we go.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is
not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Did you think no one was watching?
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
your mission.
Suppose we go where no man has gone before.
To reclaim the American dream.
To be given the right of human beings to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
You've certainly come to the right place.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Friday, July 17th, 2015. I want to thank you for joining us this morning. You could have been anywhere in the world today, but you decided to spend some time with us, and we want to thank you. To everyone listening in on Spreaker, welcome aboard. Those of you who are watching this either live or later on YouTube, welcome aboard. So many things to talk about today. A lot of things happening in the news. Shooting in Chattanooga, Tennessee on yesterday. The case of Sandra Bland, which is starting to get some attention, a lot of needed attention. President Obama being the first sitting president to visit a prison. And it looks like he's getting ready to push forward with his desire for prison reform. So a lot of things happening in the news. And so all of these things we want to talk about, and we want you to join in the conversation. You can always join us live. If you're listening live, you can join us by calling in at 857-600-0518. If you're watching after the fact, or listening after the fact, you can always leave comments and questions on our YouTube channel or on our Spreaker channel, or you can email us. A lot of comments, a lot of conversations going on Facebook, and a lot of good feedback, a lot of dialogue. And I think that's what's important, is that we not just hear my own voice. It's not important that you guys hear my voice. It's important that we discuss the things that are happening around us. And great minds can come together and find solutions to problems. And you never know. It really can start from very small beginnings. But all that to say is, talk back to me. Don't let me just talk to you. I want you to talk back to me, and I want you to share your insight. I want you to share what you think is best. Whenever I ask questions, which I think I will start doing from now on, every time I ask for feedback, I always get the most insightful commentary. Now, well, let me qualify that statement. I would say usually, whenever I ask a question, I do get some really insightful commentary. But then, of course, we're talking about the internet, right? We're talking about the land of trolls. So sometimes I get just some bull, but that's to be expected. But I appreciate my crowd. I appreciate the audience, no matter how small. We're approaching 2,000 viewers, 2,000 subscribers on YouTube. So we want you to subscribe. I think we're 60 away or so. A lot of people have unsubscribed from us, and I look at the videos that they have unsubscribed from, and I understand. A lot of people don't agree with me on my stance supporting LGBT rights. Okay, sorry, I was just reading a note that came across my desk. A lot of people don't like when I have to talk about racism, and then a lot of people don't like when I don't talk about racism enough. So everybody has their proclivities, or rather, everyone has their preferences, and so everyone's not going to be on board. But that's what it is. That's life. But those who have remained, I love the audience that has remained, because you guys are engaged and you guys bring a lot of commentary, a lot of insight, and it enriches the conversation. And so for that, I am grateful. So now, back to the news that's happening today. So Chattanooga, Tennessee, terrorism, domestic terrorism, gentlemen pulled up outside of a recruiting center, and it was actually a recruiting complex where they have multiple facilities for recruiting. And he shot up a Marine recruiting center, killed 4 Marines and wounded 3. He went to another location to continue the shootout to another facility, and the police gave chase. In the process, one of the police officers was injured, and Muhammad Yusuf Abdullah. Goodness, this is a difficult last name, folks. Abdulaziz Muhammad Yusuf Abdullah. You know what? It doesn't matter because I shouldn't be mentioning his name on the air anyway, but I will get the pronunciation of that and say it correctly. But he is dead. He was killed in the shootout. And so he is, just getting a little information on him. He's Palestinian of descent. He was a naturalized American citizen, graduated from high school here in the United States. He was a cage fighter. And no one is really saying we don't have any insight as to why he was radicalized. But one thing that's certain is the fact that we are treating this with unequivocal language of terrorism. There's really there's no high, low, or in between. It is being viewed as an act of domestic terrorism. That is one interesting spin on it versus any connection. There hasn't been any connection with any organizations abroad. But I'm interested in the fact that without any variation in language across the news media, across officials, this has been categorized as a terrorist act. Now, there was an attempt to try to link this to ISIS because after the attack, ISIS, a Twitter account linked to ISIS, tweeted out that, tweeted out hashtag Chattanooga and wonders that America would see and warning American dogs and all the stuff that they say all the time. And because of the time zone discrepancy, the timestamp was at 10:34. And the attacks happened at around, I think it was 10:49 when the attacks happened. But Fox News did not pay attention to the time zone variation. And so they put out a story that ISIS predicted the attack, when in actuality, ISIS was an hour behind, and they tweeted Chattanooga after they heard about the incident. And so, that's in many regards, to give Fox News some credit, which I will never do on a regular basis, but that's an honest mistake. Not paying attention to the time zone. It's a sloppy mistake, but it's an honest mistake. However, the same reporter who put out that false report, that incorrect report the first time, she doubled down later on that evening. Later on that evening, after the internet eviscerated them about giving out a false report, she doubled down on it. So it's interesting how hard and how quickly we tie, or we want the narrative of this lone shooter, which it looks like right now he had no ties. That could change as we speak. There could be a report coming out right now where the FBI, the Department of Justice, has unearthed some type of connection to international terrorist organizations. But as it stands right now, that is not the case. As it stands right now, all we know is that a single guy operating alone shot and killed 4 Marines, wounded 3, and wounded a police officer. But I'm amazed at the monolithic use of language. Why are we instantly considering this? I'm going to ask the question. You guys can curse me out in the chat room or whatever, but I have to ask this question. Why in this instance are we unequivocally labeling this terrorism as opposed to Dylan Roof, who killed 9 people, and we're still questioning now today whether or not that was terrorism, whether or not it was domestic terrorism? Now, I have my opinions, I have my beliefs, I have my biases. I obviously come to this conversation fully biased, right? And but I don't let my bias cloud my reasoning. If we have a lone shooter operating alone, no matter their motivation is hate, their motivation is they want to kill, they want to murder. Why in one instance are we questioning whether or not it was terrorism? And in another instance, there is not a question. There's without fail, there nobody. And matter of fact, if you say something to the contrary, if you suggest that this was not terrorism, you would get lambasted, you would get derided, you would get publicly shamed if you say anything about Chattanooga and don't say that this guy was a terrorist. Well, what's the difference? Until ladies and gentlemen, until we find concrete ties of radicalization, and clearly he was radicalized, right? But concrete ties to international terrorist organizations, until we find that, it is a case of domestic terrorism. What is the difference between his domestic terrorism and the domestic terrorism in Charleston, North Carolina, South Carolina? So it's this monolithic reporting that and this monolithic language that the media and people in charge and the powers that be use with regard to certain demographics. If this had not been a person of Middle Eastern descent, I think it was Palestinian, so Middle Eastern descent, he was a Muslim. If he had not been a Muslim, would they have labeled this instantly and so concretely as a terrorist act? We have to ask ourselves that question, because it is night and day difference. What makes a terrorist? That's the question. What makes an act a terroristic act? It is, you don't compare tragedies, right? We're not comparing the numbers of people that were killed. We're not comparing the human life as human life. I know we put extra value on American lives. So, but they were all American across the board. Everyone who died was American. These were soldiers. These were people in church. You know, the two different incidents, and we see them all as tragedies. All of them had a lone wolf shooter so far. Why are we so 100% concrete, solid, without any equivocation, without any variation, decidedly labeling what happened yesterday terrorism, but we're still questioning whether or not what happened in Charleston terrorism? That's because, now I pose a question. Now I'm going to give you what I think. I think it's absolutely because the media and America in general, we are set on certain narratives that we are familiar with, tropes that we're familiar with, and storylines that we're comfortable with, that we can easily digest. It's like predicting. We know what the audience wants to hear. And so once we label this a certain narrative a certain way, that's what the media, the masses, that's what they want to consume. We see this across the board. And I don't want to burden this. I have some examples, but I don't want to burden this particular conversation. I don't want to overlook the tragedy of the situation, but I think we are mature enough to actually ask some difficult questions. Is it tragic? Without question. Right, we're not questioning the level of what happened yesterday. We mourn any. That's the thing. Anytime life in general, anytime someone is killed, anytime someone is slaughtered and massacred, whether it be in a recruiting center or on the battlefield, you know what I mean. We mourn with them. So there's no question about the sadness. There's no question about the bereaving families. But you know what? We have to look at the bigger picture. At least I do. You don't have to, but I do. And you're listening to me, right? At the bigger picture instantly. I'm not thrown off, but in a way I'm thrown off, if that makes any sense to you guys. But it's so clear. There's such a clear difference in the way that we use language. And this guy is clearly a domestic terrorist. But in other cases, we're afraid, or we won't even consider, or we have to debate. Why is there no debate with regard to this guy? And of course, the easy answer is because he's a Muslim, because he's of Arabic descent. And the narrative in the United States is if anyone does any crime and they are of Arabic descent, they're a terrorist. And if you say anything otherwise, then you're trying to be politically correct. Right? Just like if a black person commits a crime, they're going to be labeled a thug. without any equipment, without any variation, that's what we go with, right? There are narratives that we are comfortable with in our media, and we never challenge them in a meaningful way. We might tweet about it, we might moan about it, we might grope about it, but groan about it rather, not grope, but we never challenge the system enough to say, listen, if what this guy did, he was an American citizen, he was the only difference between him and Dylan Roof is that he was of Middle Eastern descent and he was a Muslim. So if what he did, we have no doubt in our mind that he is a terrorist, which I agree, he's a domestic terrorist. If he is a domestic terrorist, then why do we have any question in our mind whatsoever with regard to what happened in Charleston? Can you not be a terrorist if you're white and you're Christian? That's clearly not the case. That's clearly not the case. We see in the Oklahoma City bombings, he was white, he was a Christian, and that was obviously terrorism. So why are we mincing words? Why are we even having this debate? What happened in Chattanooga, Tennessee, what happened in Charleston, South Carolina, were both acts of terrorism, and we need to stop allowing the media to cast narratives that are familiar and that we simply fall in. We fall in line and we go with it without question. But whenever we see, and it is unfortunately, it's the case that it falls along race lines of race. If it's a white person doing a mass shooting, as we saw in Aurora, the guilty verdict that just came down, for the last 3 years, we have been questioning the sanity of this guy. We never said that, and I don't have his name in front of me. Maybe I do. It's on some of my notes somewhere. But the guy from the movie theater shootings, we never said that he was a terrorist. We questioned whether or not he was mentally sound. Dylan Roof, the very first thing that, and I'm guilty of it because when I did the very first report for it, for my partnership with Your Black World was, we were questioning. The first thing we questioned was his sanity versus questioning whether or not he was a terrorist. And so it's very easy to fall into these tropes across the board. But when it's a white shooter, we question his mental capacity of right and wrong. If it's an Arabic, a Muslim, or a Middle Eastern descent shooter, we instantly go to the narrative of terrorism. If it's a black shooter, a thug. This is so clear. And it's so disturbing. And what it does, it places a value on, it places an extra value and humanizes one group, John Holmes. Yeah. You know what? I'll call out his name because he just got found guilty yesterday, guilty of murder. Finally, after 3 years of questioning his sanity, we finally got a guilty verdict in what was one of the worst shootings that we have ever seen, And maybe that's part of the problem. We're starting to see shootings like this on an average, every so many months, and we're becoming numb to it. And the only variation we see is in how we cast the narrative. And the narrative of yesterday is instantly, without question, no one dare says anything otherwise. Because if you dare challenge the fact of whether this was a terroristic act, then all of a sudden you are a politically correct shill. You're not American. You're unpatriotic, which goes to another narrative that we allow. And I'm going to go to a break, but I want to pull up one more narrative that we allow and we never question. Whenever we go to war, the narrative is instantly James Holmes. Thank you. James Holmes, not John Holmes. We instantly go to the narrative of you either support the troops, you either support the war, or you're not supporting the troops. That's the narrative that we allow from all of our media outlets, and anyone who dare questions the war, then you're not patriotic. We have to be, and what happens is that shapes the national discourse. It has the ability to shape not only the discourse, but policy. Because if we have silenced people with regard to the language that we can use, then we have silenced the scope. We have narrowed, rather, the scope of the conversation. We have narrowed the scope of the conversation, and our political leaders are absolutely beholden to the national discourse. We can get out of politicians what we need based on the national discourse. But if we allow the media to continue to fall into these easy racially tinged narratives, then we limit the discourse that is necessary to get the results that we need to ensure that these types of things never happen again. All right, folks. I went on too long on that one. When we come back, I want to talk about Sandra Bland and what's going on with her, and actually the media narrative plays in that as well. You could join this conversation, 857-600-0518. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show. We'll be back right after this.
When you're ready to lose weight, why count, track, and worry over every meal? Jenny Craig makes it simple. Just walk into a neighborhood Jenny Craig center or give us a call. You'll meet your dedicated personal consultant who helps you reach your goals. Together, you'll pick out delicious Jenny Craig foods that you'll love and design a menu that fits your life. And the best part is that you can get started losing weight right away. Don't wait any longer to take advantage of our best offer ever. Call 1-800-JENNY20 or visit jennycraig.com.
What's that?
This is the sound of salmonella gyrating on your undercooked chicken. And it looks like Mom might be taking it out a little early. Don't let salmonella get funky with your chicken. On average, 1 in 6 Americans will get a foodborne illness this year. So use a thermometer to cook each type of meat to the right temperature. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.gov. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
On the next episode of Recipes for Disaster.
I'm making beef sliders for my friend Sandy. Nana taught me to always pull meat off the grill early so it's extra juicy.
Use a food thermometer to ensure ground beef is 160 degrees, or you could make people really sick. Sandy didn't think twice about the slider she ate until yoga class, when a nasty case of food poisoning turned her downward-facing dog into upward-moving lunch. Watch Recipes for Disaster at foodsafety.gov and learn the steps Maria unwittingly leaves out. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
When I grow up, I want to be a new pair of blue jeans. When I want to be a kid's first computer.
These are young people who...
I want to be a bike that races around the country. I want to be a bench on a forest trail. When I grow up, I don't want to be a piece of garbage. And if you recycle me, I won't be.
Give your garbage another life. Recycle. Learn how at iwanttoberecycled.org. Brought to you by Keep America Beautiful and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
Welcome back. So just, you know, it doesn't bother me. Let me rephrase. Let me start that sentence over. I have no doubt in my mind that what happened yesterday was terrorism. To be certain, right? The only question in my mind is, why are we so readily, so quickly, so fast to label what happened yesterday terrorism, and we still have this big ambiguous question mark over Charleston, South Carolina? That's the only thing I'm questioning. And I'm not naive. I do know exactly what's going on, but I pose it as a question because I want you to think about it for yourself beyond what I'm saying, right? I want you to think about it and say, what is the difference? The motivations, hate, right? The motivation is making a political statement. I mean, that is one of the fundamental definitions of terrorism, is that you engage in acts to bring fear into the public for the purposes of a political statement and a political goal. Is that not what happened in both scenarios? And so with regard to media narratives, the story out of was actually across several states. It starts in Chicago and it ends in Texas. The story of Sandra Bland, as it's beginning to unpack and unravel. Sandra Bland is a 28-year-old African-American woman who was on her way to her alma mater, Prairie View A&M, a historically Black college and university, HBCU. She was going for an interview. And she, I think that it was already almost a foregone conclusion that she was going to get the job, because I saw video of her home where she had packed up, right? She was ready for this job, and she was going down for an interview at her alma mater, and en route, she got pulled over for a traffic violation. Now, this traffic violation stop escalated very quickly from failing to turn on her signal to the cops pulling her out of the car, slamming her on the ground, slamming her head into the concrete, putting their full weight, two grown men putting their full weight on her back, and arresting her, taking her to jail. And so it escalated from this is the disconnect. And I'll talk about the media narrative that goes along with it. But the disconnect is, what in the world happened between the time she got stopped for a traffic violation to the time that they drug her out of the car? A lot of people are focusing on the fact that, she ended up dead, which is the tragedy. But the tragedy didn't begin with her suicide or her alleged suicide. The tragedy began with the escalation from 0 to 100, from "ma'am, can I get your license and your registration," all the way to, throwing her on the ground. What in the world could she have done to deserve that type of treatment? Now, with regard to media narratives, whenever we see incidents with police officers and people of color, women or men, you have two very different narratives that are instantly fallen into, and no one questions those narratives, right? The media instantly, either on the left-hand side, says that it's absolutely about race, which a lot of times it is. But if we so easily fall into that narrative, we never unpack it any more than that. I mean, was race involved? Probably. But if we default to that, if we instantly default to that, then we don't get to unpack the complexities of what actually happened, right? But that's not the one that bothers me the most, obviously, is the narrative that somehow, some way, this Black person did something to deserve their personal execution. And that is usually the narrative that we get from the right all of the time, without fail. And every single, even with the pool incident where the girls were thrown around on the ground, the very first thing the Fox News wants to say about it is that, oh, she was no angel. Right. So there's these disparate and separate and very antithetical narratives that are forwarded by either side of the media, and neither one really lends to our ability to unpack a complex situation. The complexity of the situation is, what in the entire hell could have happened between the time they stopped her for her for failing to put on her blinkers to them arresting her? Now, I did an entire series of articles, well, 2 articles on incidents that I've seen where police escalate from 0 to 100 anytime someone questions them, anytime someone pushes back, anytime someone dares to challenge them. And if this is an example of that, if this is an example of a citizen who was talking back, and it escalated from "ma'am, can I get your license and registration," all the way to throwing her on the ground, then that is a problem in itself that we need to address. And we've started the narrative, unfortunately, as tragic as it is, we've started the narrative of why or how or who killed her in the prison, when we need to ask the question of, why was she pulled out of her car in the first place? There is no amount of talking back. There's no amount of challenging authority, because that is ingrained in our national psyche. We as Americans have challenged authority since the very beginning of this damn country. And so if we're going to say that she shouldn't have talked back, then across American history, we need to rewrite history and say nobody should have ever talked back. So that's not an excuse. And anyone who brings that up is disingenuous and fatuous at best. Right. So if it is the case that they pulled her out and the situation escalated because she talked back, then we have a fundamental error problem in our policing system that starts at the very beginning. We can't hinge this conversation on how she was killed. We do need to ask that. We do need to find that out. We do need to know why. People need to be held accountable. They need to be held accountable for her death. But if we're going to stop these things from happening over and over and over and over again, then we need to ask why she was pulled out of her car in the first place. And that's one of the things that bothers me about media narratives, is that we're not asking that question. That question we're not asking. We're asking what happened to her while she was arrested. I'm saying, why was she arrested in the first place? Not even why she was arrested in the first place. Why was she pulled out of her car in the first place? What could she have done? Unless anything short of her taking her application and throwing it in the face of a police officer, anything short of that, what could possibly have occurred for them to pull her out of her car and escalate the situation to that point? To me, nothing. Because if she was becoming indignant, if she was becoming talking back, then the police officer needs to look at the situation from a measured response, right? Let me just cut to the chase. I've seen police officers escalate stuff that does not have to be escalated, and we see it over and over and over again. And if we are paying them our tax dollar money, if they are deputized to be an agent of the law and they have the ability to use deadly force, then the responsibility needs to be on them to constantly de-escalate. They need to always be de-escalating. Always be de-escalating. That should be one of the fundamental tenets, training pieces for police officers, because we've seen it time and time again. The moment you have the nerve to talk back to a police officer, oh hell, they're going to lose their mind, because how dare you challenge my authority? But the narrative doesn't start. And now the real thing about the narrative that bothers me the most is that let's just talk about the claim of her suicide. Last night, the media defaulted to one of her videos. And in one of those videos, she talked about that she suffers from depression and she suffers from PTSD. And so I went online. I'm like, okay, well, that's a variable that we must factor into the equation, right? So I went online to look at the video, to find the video. And I never found that video, to be honest with you. I didn't find that video because I got stuck on all of her other videos. I mean, she has an entire library of video commentary. And as you start watching those videos, you start looking at yourself and saying, this is not a person who would kill themselves. And so what do they do in the media, though? They don't talk about the other 25, 30 videos that she has where she's inspiring, where she's motivational, where she's challenging the system, where she's challenging police violence against minorities, where she's challenging institutionalized racism. They don't talk about that. They talk about the one video where she was depressed. Now, how many of us have battled depression in some form or another? I know there's varying scales, right? But we have all, in some way or some form or fashion, suffered from depression, and we communicate about it, right? So now are we going to be, if something happens to us, are they going to only focus on that one time we talked about depression and completely ignore the entire library of inspirational, motivational, radical, revolutionary commentary that this woman gave? That is what bothers me about the power of the media. And so the people, what it does, it relinquishes any doubt or any question in the minds of people who are straddling the fence. You have those people, and I'm going to show you how they did the same exact thing in Ferguson. There are people who look at this situation and they begin to question, and they maybe never before have questioned what's going on. And the way you get those people off of the fence and you get them down political and ideological lines is you throw them one little inkling of doubt, something that they can hold on to. Because just as the story stands, holistically, it makes absolutely no sense. And anybody that's reasonable is going to question what happened to Sandra Bland. So they go to the rescue and they pull out one narrative. Out of the entire treasure trove of all of her videos, they pull out one thing where she talked about her depression, completely ignoring everything else that she said that was quite frankly, she was an amazing woman. And what that does is to all the people who maybe, you know, this is half of America right now. Half of America is like, well, damn, that is a strange story. It doesn't make sense that she would kill herself. She was on her way to get a job. Yeah, but I don't believe it's race. Everybody talks about racism. It couldn't be racism. Come on. Maybe it was racist. Oh, depression. She was depressed. Okay, so that's what it was, depression. Whoo, I thought maybe it was racism for real. That is the power of media narratives. And so they've thrown this out there. And they did the same exact thing in Ferguson with the robbery that had nothing to do with the incident with Darren Wilson, because Darren Wilson didn't know about the robbery. Everybody in America, even Fox News was like, wait a minute, what's going on in Ferguson is ridiculous. The hyper militarization of the police is ridiculous. Look at how they're treating reporters. It had gotten so bad. It had gotten so bad that even Fox News was saying that it was ridiculous. And so what do? They instantly throw into the mix. They muddy the waters. They muddy the waters by throwing in, oh, well, Michael Brown was strong-armed robbery. You know, he robbed the store just before he was killed. And so everyone who was questioning, everyone who was on the fence, everyone who did have a doubt in their mind for a moment, all of a sudden they were like, oh no, you know, he earned that. He deserved that. Forget Ferguson. Everything subsequent after that is irrelevant. Who cares that the police came out with tanker trucks, with armored trucks? Who cared that they came out in full battle fatigue and you know, all the toys that they got from the Department of Justice, from the Pentagon? Who cares about all that? Because, you know, Michael Brown was a thug. The media has the ability to shape the mindsets of everyone who listens to them. It happens on the left and it happens on the right. And they have done this. They've done this with the story out of Chattanooga. They did it with the story out of Charleston. And they're doing this now with Sandra Bland. And they are introducing into the conversation the fact that out of 25 videos, out of 25 motivational, inspirational, revolutionary, radical, you know, positive videos about how it's our responsibility, it's our job to change our own destinies. It's our job. I mean, I watched as many as I had time to watch. I mean, she started every video so positively, and she closed every video so positively, right? She always challenged us to do more, that we are in charge of our own destiny, that we can make a difference, that we can do it. And instead of bringing up any of that, they found the one video where she said that she was struggling with depression. And now anybody who was questioning it before, anyone who did consider for a moment that maybe something happened that was an abuse of, at a minimum, an abuse of power. Now they're saying, oh, well, she was depressed. And that explains it. Closed, open and shut case. We have to push back on the narratives and on the place in the narrative that they want us to start. It's twofold. We have to push back on these false narratives or these distractions. She may have been suffering from depression, but not everybody who suffers from depression kills themselves, right? We push back on that false narrative. And then we push back on the fact that they want to start the conversation with her suicide, with her alleged suicide, when the conversation needs to start all the way back to why the police officers allowed that situation to be escalated. They are the ones that are trained. They are the ones that are paid with tax dollars. They are the ones that are deputized with force. They're the ones who should be the best representation of our community when they absolutely are not. If we don't start the narrative there and ask what happened, that they allowed it to be escalated, then this will continue to happen over and over. And it has, how many damn times does it have to happen? But we get caught up. We get caught up in we chase after these media narratives without pausing. And I appreciate a lot of stuff that people on Twitter do, and the Daily Kos and Sean King. I appreciate their persistence and their focus on institutionalized racism and police brutality. However, we are guilty of it too. because if we start the narrative at race, then we never unpack the complexities of that encounter. And we have to unpack that, because I'm telling you, it is, and let me not be ambiguous with my phraseology here, because I want to make it clear. It is amplified and magnified because of race. But we're dealing with a group of people who have guns, who have big egos, and anytime someone challenges their authority, whether it's black or white, if you're young and you challenge their authority, you're going to catch it. If you're black and you challenge their authority, you're going to catch it. If you're white and you challenge their authority, you can get away with it. So there is a disparity with regard to race, but the problem is not just race. The problem is the egomaniacs that we have given guns that cannot handle a confrontation with a belligerent person. And I don't know that she was belligerent, but I'm just telling you from every other example that I've seen and that I've studied, it is because police officers do not like to be challenged whatsoever, that they escalate instead of de-escalate. And then unless we address that, if we start the narrative with race, they're going to block the conversation and not address the very real problem of egotistic police officers who dare you to challenge them. Because how else can you escalate from a traffic signal to pulling her out, slamming her on the ground, and arresting her over the weekend and putting her in jail over the weekend? The suicide is clearly a tragedy. The alleged suicide. I'm sorry. You see how easy it is to get caught up in these narratives? The alleged suicide is a tragedy. What happened to her in prison, whatever it was, is a tragedy, and somebody needs to be held accountable. But we need to ask, why in the entire hell was she arrested in the first place? That's where we need to start. Why was she not even arrested? Why was she pulled out of the car in the first place? I'm going to take a break so I can bring this down a little bit. And when we come back, we'll deal with some other things. All right, this is the Benjamin Dixon Show. We'll be back after this.
You're tuned in to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Join the conversation, 857-600-0518.
Looking for the right business opportunity? Need the right product, the right marketing plan, and the absolute best training in the world? Well, look no further. The Elite Team. Every leader in time excels. They believe the key ingredients in becoming successful in life and in business are just a keystroke away. Go to www.eliteteamsite.com. That's www.eliteteamsite.com. The Elite Team has a system in place that will move you closer to achieving your goals and dreams. Visit www.eliteteamsite.com or TonyFlemingEnterprises.com today.
College is important, but it can also be expensive. College Planning Services is a group of educators, administrators, counselors, and other licensed professionals that work together to provide the necessary services, networks, and information to reach students that are serious about getting a college education. College Planning Services partners with financial institutions, corporate sponsors, and other major players in the global market to strategize in building a pool of information regarding financial aid, scholarships, and funding information to assist students in preparing to access the essential resources to build upon their path to an educational future. Learn more at collegeplanningtoday.com and let us help you start your college career.
Do you want to take your business to the next level? Ultimate Business Solutions provides the support you need to increase your customer base and sell more products and services online. Specializing in graphic arts, web development, and internet marketing, Ultimate Business Solutions creates the face of your business. If you're looking for a custom logo, dynamic website, or popping marketing material, call Ultimate Business Solutions today at 404-704-2197 or visit www.ultimatebizsolutions.com. Ultimate Business Solutions. Let us create your future.
Do you have tax issues, owe back taxes, or need tax relief?
Contact L&B Tax Service today. L&B offers you over 15 years of expertise and first-class tax service for individuals, professionals, and business owners. With nationwide service, you can easily find a location near you. Contact one of our tax professionals through our website, lbtaxservice.com. That's www.lbtaxservice.com. L&B Tax Service Incorporated. Tax professionals that you can trust.
You've tuned in to The Benjamin Dixon Show.
Welcome back. The narratives cannot begin in the middle, in the most convenient place. We cannot allow them to control what we question. We have an ability. We have so much power now, and I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that, but we have the power from social media alone to control the bigger media outlets. It's a lot of work. I mean, it requires, hundreds of thousands of people acting in concert, in harmony with each other. I mean, and that's the entire purpose of a hashtag, right? But we have that ability. We have the ability to set the national conversation. And I think we shortchange ourselves. Here's the thing. And actually, there's another conversation going on with regard to Dr. Cornel West and Ta-Nehisi Coates that I think is relevant at a meta level. Okay, let me unpack all these thoughts because I have 13 dozen thoughts in my head right now. Number one, I think we do ourselves a disservice, and we limit the scope of a conversation when we default to race. Even though we absolutely know race is involved. But Ta-Nehisi Coates one time said, white supremacy, the entire purpose of white supremacy was not about hatred of skin color, but about the plundering of wealth. It's tied to money. And so if we never go back to the very roots, we're always will be treating the symptoms. Racism is for some people, it's just an expression of a symptom of a deeper problem in our national conversation. When we default to race, we don't address those other issues that were involved. And I think y'all done got me country, y'all can disagree with me as much as you want. But when a police officer pulls you over, it's not just race that he sees. It's whether or not you're going to respect his perceived authority that he sees. It's whether or not you're going to be subservient to his power. It's whether or not you're going to say yes, sir, or no, sir, yes, ma'am, and yes, ma'am. Now, absolutely, that is magnified when you throw in race, but it is not the only factor. And if we don't address the underlying factor that we have some crazy people running around here with guns, deputized to keep the peace, yet they are constantly escalating. Anyone who's been stopped by a police officer before, a bad police officer before, you know what I'm talking about. You see that underneath that badge is someone who's ready to pop off at the drop of a dime. And that falls on the backs of minorities and young minorities even more, man. The younger you are, the less likely you can survive a confrontation with police where you challenge their authority. But the media narratives that control our entire conversation keeps us from having these the very necessary conversations to fix the problem. I don't want to keep rehearsing. She said something, man. Sandra said something at the end. She said, and I'm trying to get that video uploaded in the back. That's why I keep turning around. She said something at the end of one of her videos, man, that touched me, and I'm going to play it for you. She said that we have to move beyond knowing something was going to happen. And the apathy, she didn't say apathy, I'm paraphrasing now. The apathy that comes with, I knew that was going to happen. Well, don't just know something is going to happen, do something about it. And what I'm saying is that we are not having the conversation that is necessary. On one side of the equation, that's intentional. On one side of the equation, with a lot of, hey, it is what it is. With a lot of conservative media outlets, it's intentional. The deflection, the distraction, the throwing in of red meat, the throwing in of the very powerful, potent potential of racism to divide us, right? It's like clockwork. If you can muddy the waters of the conversation, nothing will ever happen. And we're back here again. Damn it, we are back here again with another hashtag. And what's painful about this is that she talked about this exact, Sandra talked about this exact thing, where we sit around and we rehearse and we're like, well, I knew that was going to happen. Don't just know something is going to happen. Do something about it. And if what we've been doing for the last 50 years has not fixed it, then maybe we need to take a step back and say, how else can we address this situation to actually stop these unnecessary and tragic deaths from happening? We stop it by controlling the narrative with the power that we have. And that's another thing she said, man. I'm just taking everything from her because she was that, you know what? She was a part of us. And when I say us, I'm talking about me and people like me who throw on a camera and they get in their home and fix it up and try to make it look like something so that they can give their opinion about what's going on. She had beautiful insight. She had, I don't know everything about her because I just met her yesterday. I didn't know who she was. And that's even more so an indicator that she was a part of us, right? She wasn't famous. She wasn't Twitter famous. She wasn't Facebook famous. She was a person who saw problems and simply wanted to address them. She saw problems and wanted to speak out about them. She was passionate about it. And she said it in this video that everyone is circulating, that she pointed to her phone and she said, this thing right here, this one has my kids' stickers on it, but this right here has the ability to change the world. And so in that regard, she was just one of us. And it could have been any of us. It could have been any of us, but it wasn't. And it was her.
A vast virus database has been updated.
I thought I fixed that the other day. I'm going to come back to Sandra. I'm going to come back to her. I don't know why it's taking so long, but I need to take one more break because I actually absolutely want to play this video of her and this audio clip of her. President Obama is, it looks like in the last stages of his presidency. One last thing that he wants to tackle is prison reform. And this is something that is absolutely near and dear to my heart. And it's something that absolutely, we make up 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the people that are imprisoned. It disproportionately affects minorities. It disproportionately affects minority men and young men. And so we see that this prison industrial complex that we have, it's become big business. It has become a revenue stream for for-profit organizations. And President Obama is finally doing something that we knew needed to be done. And I want to play a short clip of him visiting a prison, El Reno Federal Penitentiary in Oklahoma on yesterday. And I want to just listen to what he says, and we'll go from there.
These are young people who made mistakes that aren't that different than the mistakes I made. You know, I think we have a tendency sometimes to almost take for granted or think it's normal that so many young people end up in our criminal justice system. It's not normal. It's not what happens in other countries. What is normal is teenagers doing stupid things. What is normal is young people making mistakes.
What is normal is young people making mistakes, and that's, I think that's the truest thing ever. But the level with which we imprison our young people for nonviolent offenses, I did not realize that so many people are spending life sentences because of nonviolent drug crimes. It is amazing as you guys listen to me plug in and unplug USB devices. I need to get one more video. It's amazing. And so it looks like President Obama is going to focus and hunker down on prison reform. He's already what's the word? He didn't pardon them. Yeah, here we go. I need to find a way to cut all that off in the future. But anyway, he's already done this for 46 offenders. He's already commuted the sentences of 46 offenders, which is going to shorten their time. But there's still 30,000. There's still 30,000 people in jail for nonviolent offenses. And you think about that. And some of them are spending life sentences. And so we look at them at, he said in another clip, which was actually a longer and I think probably more salient clip, he addressed it from the fact that a lot of these kids, a lot of these young people who have made these mistakes, had they been given the second opportunity that many middle class average Americans get, that second chance, they would be something entirely different than what the world has literally locked them up into being. They've locked their entire destiny into being prisoners, and because of their offense. But what Obama said, this phrase, right? And this phrase is so familiar. My mentor used to say it all the time. There go I, but by the grace of God. How many of us have done something that could have changed the entire trajectory of our lives, but we either got away with it, we never got caught for it, or when we got caught, somebody had enough mercy on us not to throw us in prison for the full time that we could have gotten, right? I know a lot of people have never gotten in trouble with the law. Yeah, okay, of course. But most of you who've never gotten in trouble with the law just never got caught. And that's what Obama is talking about. That's what the president is talking about. So I'll be interested in seeing what he's going to do. Right now, I don't want to harp too much on his words. I want to see what he's going to do about it. What is he going to do in these waning days of his administration about the overpopulation, the disproportionate population of Americans in prison, the disproportionate population of African Americans in prison, and the sentences that do not match the severity of the crime. All right, folks, I'm just about out of time. And before I go, I want you to see for yourself. You heard me talking about her. I want you to see for yourself the type of person that Sandra Bland was. And when you see this, only thing I want you to ask yourself is this the type of person? And of course, in all fairness, you never know what a person is dealing with. But if we're going to use one single video and say that because of this video where she discussed depression, we can conclude that she was suicidal, then it's only fair that we look at the rest of the videos and say, wait a minute, there's so many more that indicate to us that she would never, like her family said, suicide is unfathomable.
Good morning, my beautiful.
All right, hold tight while I switch screens here and let you see it for yourself. This is Sandra Bland, and I just want you to make that call for yourself. What happened to her?
Good morning, my beautiful kings and queens. Good morning, my beautiful kings and queens. Good morning, my beautiful kings and queens. I was asked, was I trying to racially unite or racially incite? My goal is to racially unite. In the process of doing that, some people will be incited, i.e. upset. So for you who can say, oh, the law doesn't see color, it doesn't see color because you ain't got no color in your skin. You're going to learn today. You're going to learn that we have to just stop icing these things over. We have to stop acting like they don't matter. And so Sandy is going to speak whenever I see something wrong. I'm going to call out racism wherever I see it.
And this is what's in my car. You see that? That's a motorcycle in my car. God is so good. The man that flew over my car is standing right here.
So, you know, the human in me was a little upset, but the Christian and the God in me could not be mad about a material thing that could easily be replaced. And God's got something better in store. But I'm here to change history. I am ready to do what I need to do for this next generation. You can do it. We can be successful. It is up to us. I know everybody don't believe in God, which is fine. But I want you to know on Sandy Speaks, I'm going to talk about God because for me, he has truly opened my eyes and shown me that there's something out there that we can do. We can stop sitting around and just saying, oh, well, we knew that was going to happen. It's time to stop knowing that was going to happen. And it's time to start doing something.
And until that moment comes, when we, the Americans, are able to accept the fact that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other, that I am not a ward of America. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment.
That we are brothers. It's not a question of Jews or Christians or Muslims. We're all in the same boat.
We need each other.
Love is a condition so powerful. It may be that which holds the stars in the firmament.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
I come to you today to say that we can build a newer and better nation. I say we can do so, that we must do so, and that we will do so.
You've tuned in to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at www.thebenjamindixonshow.com.